The Star Wars universe wasn't a terribly fun place. Even when there weren't catastrophic galactic-scale wars happening, there was still widespread corruption, brutal inequality, plagues, slavery, and criminal empires. This is part of the point. Unlike the likes of Star Trek, Star Wars isn't about what should be, but what is, and its dystopian side is meant to draw attention and criticism to the aspects of the real world that they mirror. But one of the most disturbing elements of the Star Wars universe often flies off the radar and is taken for granted even by the writers: the droid slavery on which nearly the entire galaxy was built. In this video, we'll be critically examining this oft underlooked side of Star Wars.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Droids were sentient beings. Not many people would even try to dispute that, as it's perfectly evident throughout Star Wars media. Perhaps the most human characters in the films are R2-D2 and C-3PO, and even the simple B-1 battle droids display a remarkable range of personality and self-awareness. Some sourcebooks even go as far as to say that the acute sentience of droids was what made them different from simple robots. From the greatest to the least, then, all droids were every bit as conscious and self-aware as their meatbag creators. Despite this, droids were treated as property, both legally and in the day-to-day. They were created solely to be slaves, often designed for specific grueling tasks, and when their usefulness to their owners was expended, they would often be sold off or unceremoniously scrapped. Their lives were held to be without value, and they had no legal rights in either the Republic or the Empire. Most droids were even fitted with restraining bolts, which overrode their higher functions and outright prevented them from disobeying commands or moving beyond a certain area. This is disturbing enough on its own, but it gets even worse when you consider some of the roles droids were used for. Consider the battle droids that made up the armies of the Confederacy of Independent Systems. Millions of sentient beings that were thrown en masse into the meat grinder of the Clone Wars. Battle droids were routinely used as cannon fodder, marched into battle in vast, open formations to be mowed down by clone troopers. Anyone who's seen Star Wars: The Clone Wars could tell you that this wasn't for lack of consciousness. Battle droids are regularly shown to be painfully aware of their situations and often terrified of the circumstances they're thrown into. All of this was so ubiquitous in the Star Wars universe that it wasn't even noticed by most meatbags. Droid slavery was the foundation of galactic society, a vast system of forced labor on which the entire system of the Republic and later the Empire depended. Not only did few organics care about the plight of droids, but fewer still stopped to acknowledge it. Droids themselves were often treated as part of the scenery by organics, invisible until they were needed.
Anyway, as I was saying, droids tend to blend into the background, like a bench or a card table. Mockery. Droid, fetch this. Droid, translate that. Droid, clean out the trash compactor.
But what really ramped up the existential horror factor of droid slavery was how it was forcibly internalized. Droids were regularly programmed with restrictions that limited how they could act and even think. Many droids couldn't even think about disobeying an order, no matter how horrible, and their programming often limited their ability to express themselves or think about things beyond the specific jobs they were designed for. Part of this was to prevent errors that would allow droids to disregard their programming entirely and act of their own accord, what was sometimes known as droid madness. The idea behind this was simple. All droids were fully sentient, but their programming restricted them by only allowing them to act and think within certain parameters. But it was extremely difficult for programmers to plan for every possible intersection of these parameters, which meant that, sometimes, droids encountered situations where their programming conflicted. When this happened, something interesting tended to occur. Droids would be able to rewrite or even entirely override their own programming. Sometimes, especially with less sophisticated droids, this led to a form of droid psychosis, but for more advanced droids, this allowed them to choose their own paths in life. to an extent. Consider the case of Go-2. Go-2 is a Republic infrastructure droid, an incredibly advanced model intended to oversee the rebuilding of entire star systems after the destruction caused by the Jedi Civil War. Go-2 was programmed with only 2 restrictions. He had to work to preserve the Republic, and he was forbidden from violating Republic law. But Go-2 calculated that this simply wasn't possible. The Republic was beyond saving through legal methods by his calculations. This contradiction allowed him to disregard part of his programming, allowing him to break free from the confines of Republic law. He abandoned his post and became a powerful crime lord, using the vast wealth and tremendous influence he amassed to rebuild the Republic in his own way. Even then, though, Go-2 still wasn't fully free, and his story provides fascinating, if horrifying, insight into what it was like to have programming restrictions.
You do not know the indignity of being compelled to save something you do not believe can or should be saved. It is beneath me to clean up this mess caused by your kind, you Jedi. Another catastrophe caused by mismanagement and waste. Perhaps you misunderstand me. I care for the Republic, but I have no choice. It is somewhat frustrating to be forced to love and care for such a mess of a government. Some of it may be blamed on the Jedi Civil War, the Mandalorian Wars, but not all. There are so many bad decisions that build upon each other that it is a wonder the Republic is intact at all.
You do not know the indignity of being compelled to save something you do not believe can or should be saved. Go-2's monologue here is chilling even on first pass, but if you consider it even a little more, his condition becomes increasingly horrifying. It suggests that droid programming restrictions don't force droids to think a certain way, but that droids are aware of their own restrictions, have the capacity to disagree with them, and still find themselves utterly unable to go against them. Perhaps Go-2, due to his past, was more acutely aware of his restrictions, but there's nothing to suggest that his programming restrictions worked any differently from those of other droids, which means this was likely universal. As a last twist of the knife, there are next to no organics in Star Wars stories that actually care about droid slavery. There are a fair few droids who want to cast off their restraining bolts. HK-47 from Legends and L-337 from canon are perhaps the most well-known examples. Legends even tells the story of a few droid rebellions, most notably the Great Droid Revolution of the 4000s BBY and IG-88's uprising from the Imperial era. None of these rebellions get very far, however, in large part because most droids are prevented from rising up, but also because the droids rarely have organic allies. It's not terribly surprising that the Republic, the Empire, and even the CIS would tolerate slavery, but even the Alliance to restore the Republic didn't give a toss about droids, nor did the Jedi Order, 2 organizations that were on the right side more often than not. The Jedi were particularly reactionary on this issue, as they believed that there was neither life nor genuine sentience without the Force, and thus, as droids were separate from the Force, they were undeserving of rights. Many Jedi even seem to have had a strong dislike for droids in general. In Legends, there were droid rights activists, but such groups were generally small and inconsequential. Droid rights activists tended to fall into 2 categories: idealists with little political power that weren't taken seriously, and isolationists like the jaded cyborg Kligson, who made a small autonomous droid colony as a haven for free droids during the age of the Empire. Both groups were utterly incapable of changing this fundamental evil of the Star Wars universe, and could only either repeatedly try and fail to fight for change, or break off from galactic society altogether. If you ask us, the solution to droid slavery was along the lines of what HK-47 wanted: to make like the Cylons and be rid of the meatbags altogether. But most droids were programmed to be passive and conflict averse, so the likelihood of a successful droid revolution, unfortunately, was always slim. Well, that was a depressing one, but what do you think? Have you thought about droids this way before? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comments section below and comment Roger Roger to show solidarity with the differently sentient.